You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Another beautiful Tuesday night. The NBA draft, I think, is done here at the moment. I haven't really been paying that close attention to it, but hey, the U.S. men's soccer team is 2-0 in pool play, and they got their third game here coming up on Thursday. We had the Oklahoma Sooners.
Boomer.
Kind of really a dominant game 3 in their championship series against North Carolina. So congratulations to them. They hell of a tournament they had. Obviously, they went through the gauntlet, and they absolutely earned that championship and beat a lot of really high caliber teams to do that and get there. So hats off to them. Congratulations. And pretty mild and limited on the news and notes. So that's kind of been fine, but at the same time, blah. And we're quickly approaching kind of the dog days.
That is very, very true. So we've got really kind of the only some news that did come out, right? There was a couple of things to kind of touch on and chat about there. The NFL came out and said today, hey, there's no supplemental draft this year. So that's going to be interesting on what Sorsby is going to do this season. You also saw some trade rumors start picking up pretty heavily around Shadur Sanders and what that kind of looks like there. Also, Geno Smith had some not very fun times over the weekend with some investigations allegedly happening there. So there are kind of some news and notes, but overall not a ton of things that we typically kind of start seeing. This offseason has been a far more quiet one than typical.
Feels like it. Yeah, it really feels like it. Kyle Pitts got a contract extension.
Oh, yep, that's true too.
So there's that. George Pickens has said continuously, he has said this multiple times, that he will play on the franchise tag. So we should see him at the Cowboys facility and participating in OTAs and everything else. And whether it's a sit-in or not, he said he will be there. So take him at his word there. Yeah, I mean, that Geno thing's kind of weird. Kind of came out of nowhere. We'll see. Obviously, legal team's or justice system, whatever, going to kind of play their way through that and just see where these allegations lie. But anytime you read that, it's unfortunate for both sides. I mean, if it is true, it's unfortunate for the defendant. If it's not true, then it's unfortunate for the accused, because then their name kind of gets dragged through the mud here a little bit. But we'll let due process take care of itself and kind of see how things pan out going forward.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that one comes to play, right? Kind of an interesting deal, right? Like last week when we were talking about some things, right? How a lot of these dynasty leagues we were in were kind of trying to fall all over themselves, trying to figure out how to deal with the supplemental draft thing, and then the NFL today came out and made it a real easy decision on how to handle it, to the point where they said, nope, we are not going to have a supplemental draft this year. And some of the reports on some of the wording and how that kind of came to play was kind of interesting. Do suggest anybody take a look out there on kind of the wording and the reports on what was said and what was contained in the decision on that, because it's an interesting read for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like moving forward.
Was that in the same breath, or did they send out a separate memo reminding teams that gambling is not permissible and will be dealt with severely. The NFL sent a memo out to all the owners, reminding them of that little tidbit as well. So I wasn't sure if it all kind of came out in the same breath or if they were two different things. Do you happen to know?
I believe they were two separate things, because one of those was addressed. One of the things that I was reading looked like it was addressed directly to Sorsby and his team on what that looks like there, and then the other one looks like that was sent out directly to
Yes.
the chief executives, the club presidents, the club council, and the head of player engagement on that. And so looks like it was kind of two separate deals, but ultimately kind of very much coincide with each other there, it seems like.
There you go. Hey, listen, the NFL is going to protect itself above all else. And we've seen that the NFL has been very stern with the gambling policy. Happened a couple of years ago, right? Where 4 or 5 players got wrapped up in it. With Calvin Ridley being kind of the headliner, and then there was a Colts player, and I think there was maybe a Jaguars player, something like that. But I want to say it was maybe not 6, might have been 4, something like that, where those players got wrapped up in making ill-advised decisions. And that's just kind of how we're going to leave it at that. But a little refresher is never a bad thing.
Right. And I want to say, so kind of the recent ones that came out, you had Isaiah Rodgers that was suspended indefinitely for placing wagers on NFL games, right? And these were all kind of the reported cases on that. Jameson Williams and Stanley Berryhill, both of those with the Lions, were suspended 6 games in 2023 for what was stated as betting on non-NFL sporting events while inside the team's facility. Quintez Cephas and CJ Moore, both with the Lions, and Shaka Toney with the Commanders, were suspended indefinitely in 2023 for betting on NFL games. And but all 5 players indefinitely suspended were officially reinstated by the NFL in 2024. And then the Brendan Sorsby thing today, kind of came out, and the NFL said, nope, we're not going to do the supplemental draft on this. So, yeah, it's it's an interesting deal there on how they're kind of doing that, and quite frankly, like, yeah, it's an interesting deal on why and how some of these guys decide to make these decisions that they do when there's that much at stake on the line. So, but
Yes, sir.
but yeah, looks like the memo sent today was and the decision made today were two separate things, but ultimately kind of touching on the same standpoint there. So anyway, we'll see what if there's any more that kind of comes out, news notes around this particular topic and subject. But for now, it seems to be moving in the direction. Let's see. Any other news notes that you want to hit up here?
No, sir. No, I'm ready to get into it.
All right, awesome. So we'll start hitting up the running backs on this, and we're gonna start with running back 40 and kind of work our way through running back 21 tonight. So kind of working our way backwards in reverse order on this one. But let's go ahead and just get started there. And running back number 40, we've got Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones, one of these days I'm gonna be fully prepared here. There we go. All right. Aaron Jones last year, 132 attempts, 548 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 41 targets, 28 receptions, 199 yards through the air, and 1 touchdown. Thoughts on Aaron Jones?
I think that if I'm drafting running back down this late, I want someone with maybe a bit more potential upside, maybe a bit more pop. So I don't have any interest in Aaron Jones at 40. Decent ball player. He's going to catch some passes, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's starting to miss a little bit of time. You have Jordan Mason there kind of nipping at his heels. And a lot of people were kind of hot on Jordan Mason last year. It's kind of expect to see more of the same here. There's no real upside. The floor is potentially low given his age of 31 years old. So I'm going to pass here at 40 for Aaron Jones. I think I would probably venture maybe further down the list and take a couple shots elsewhere.
Fair enough. Yeah, this is a deal where it's hard to get excited about a guy that's, you're potentially looking him at a running back 3, running back 4 type of territory, spot start as a flex player type of thing. But all of that being said, right, like his value is gonna come more in the PPR side of formats and with the reception type of work. But this is a deal right with Jordan Mason kind of pushing that one there a little bit. May not be surprising to see Aaron Jones not necessarily be the lead back before the season's done. So again, one of those that if I'm looking at a guy down in this range, I'm wanting somebody with more upside, more upswing on that one, more so than a guy that may have an okay floor. I'm looking for guys that are going to go out there and potentially be a dark horse candidate to sneak up into RB2 type of range. And Aaron Jones is not that guy, at least not for me this year. Any other thoughts on Aaron Jones?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Jordan Mason, who's kind of coming off the board, running back 39 last year. 159 attempts, 758 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground, 16 targets for 14 receptions, 51 yards, and 0 touchdowns through the air. Thoughts on Jordan Mason?
If I'm pinned into taking a Minnesota running back, I think I'd be in on Mason a bit more this year than what I would be in on Aaron Jones. 4 years younger, has a little bit more pop, running the ball there in between the tackles than what Aaron Jones has. So again, I don't know that I love it given we're, that round. Like if we're on running back 40, I would like to think that I'm probably established enough at the running back position that I'd be looking for kind of a deeper play, like Zach Charbonnet, right? Is a name that we're not going to talk about right now. He is not in the top 40 as far as ADP. So I'd skip both these guys and I'd go for Zach Charbonnet at running back 4 or 5. Well, I mean, whatever he's grabbing, like you can absorb missing that time for the first 5 weeks of the season for that extra running back, knowing he's going to see at least half the volume once he gets back. So I don't love taking the guy with injury, but again, I think there's some potential there. Same thing with like a Chris Rodriguez from Jacksonville. I think there's some potential, kind of a sneaky home run hitter there. Another guy that we're have lower down here on the list than the top 40. So both those guys, I would be a little bit more inclined to take flyers on than I would be either one of these Minnesota backs.
Yeah, and this is a deal where you're gonna probably see these two split time between Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones, split time to the point where barring injury, neither one of them really does much from a fantasy perspective. Jordan Mason, kind of that 1-2 thumper. Aaron Jones, far more of the receiving type of back. And I have a feeling they'll just eat into each other's workload so much that neither one of them ultimately has a whole lot of fantasy relevance, and potentially have some pretty have the potential to not even return value on where you're drafting them. So on that aspect, I am out on both of them. However, I would anticipate Minnesota's offense being much improved this year, which that potentially leads for a little bit of greener pastures for these guys. But I am not looking to ultimately try and make anything happen with either one of these guys on my roster. There are some other guys I'd rather go with. Any other thoughts on Jordan Mason?
No, sir.
Alrighty. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next guy up here, and that is Rachaad White. Last year, Rachaad White, 132 attempts, 572 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 45 targets, 40 receptions for 218 yards to the air. Thoughts on thoughts on Rachaad White?
The Washington backfield's something kind of interesting, and I think Katron Allen is going to end up being the leader in the clubhouse by the time the season's done and over with. But if I need, or if I want someone to just kind of start the season, I think Rachaad White's going to get some run here in Washington. It's going to be his ability to hold on to the football is probably going to maintain or help lead to his usage. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I was never a big, fan of last year. I know he kind of was a darling of the fantasy community. So, okay, fine. We're going to get to him here in a minute. So I'm not going to get too far into Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, but Rachaad White, again, nothing super sexy. I'm not sure where these points from Washington are going to come from. They're going to have to run the football some, but I don't see him. I don't know that I see him catching a ton of passes from Jaden Daniels. That running back check down isn't necessarily his game. If for whatever reason the injuries last year make Jaden Daniels a little gun shy, I do like the fact that Rachaad White can catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. We did see that in Tampa Bay. So there's some potential PPR upside right there. And on a team that has kind of a shortage of named pass catchers, I think that there's some deeper appeal there. But overall, again, you're talking like your 4th running back on the roster here. So maybe you take a flyer there. But again, if Katron Allen's there, I'd probably just wait further down the list and then pick up him and have him as a starter later on in the season.
Fair enough. Rachaad White is intriguing to me on this one, right? Like, Dan Campbell did come out Dan Quinn came out and said some very positive things around Rachaad White and how he stood out so far through the offseason program. All right, Bill certainly doesn't necessarily. It will be competition, but I don't think that that's going to necessarily eat into the role. Katron Allen potentially, you could start eating into that role later into the off season or later into the season. But to start off with, I do like the potential here for Rachaad White. This is a guy that you can get as running back 3, running back 4. I think he can potentially get you some spot RB2 starts and some flex play throughout the season on this one. And this is a guy that, if you're really thinking that Katron is a guy that's going to ultimately take over and command the backfield when it's all said and done, Rachaad White's a guy that you can pick up, play probably early in the season, and flip through partway through for a more useful asset going down the stretch on that one. I think he'll acquire some value through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season to the point where there's some potential flip and move on and set your roster up for the back half here. And not only that, right? Like you brought up an interesting point too here with the pass catchers in Washington and the lack thereof in this one. This might be a deal with Rachaad White's receiving ability and coming out the backfield. While that necessarily hasn't been a strong part of Jaden Daniels' a game throughout the last few seasons, this could be one that they're starting to mix that up. And they have some design plays in there to try and get another pass catcher out and open in the field of play to try and try and give Jaden Daniels more than just Terry McLaurin to throw the ball to. So I could see them kind of gimmicking some plays up here and there to get him some touches out of the backfield. And I do think that there's some PPR value for Rachaad White here as well. Any other thoughts on Rachaad White?
No, sir.
All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to to Jonathan Brooks, who did not play. Well, he played a little bit last year, right? 9 attempts, 22 yards for 0 touchdowns, 3 targets, 3 receptions for 23 yards and 0 touchdowns. Thoughts on Jonathan Brooks?
I think when you get to this point, there's some opportunity here, right? And again, it's the unknown. You're gonna get him relatively cheap. He's only 22 years old. He's coming off 2 ACL tears, which is the big red flag, right? Like, if you're willing to gamble, this isn't a bad gamble to see if he can kind of start splitting that workload with Chuba, much like Chuba and Rico Dowdle did last year in Carolina. And Carolina's a team that they're going to run the football enough that we saw last year. It can work when they're kind of splitting, or if he's the one who gets hot. And that's really what it is. It's Carolina does a good job of feeding the hot running back. And so if the opportunities come and Jonathan Brooks is truly healthy, like the reports we're getting say he is, kind of seeing what this kid has finally isn't a bad idea for, again, if you can get him as your 4th running back, it's not a bad little stash to see what the kid can do. He's a former 1st round pick. No, excuse me, 2nd round pick, right?
I'd have to look that one up.
Yeah, sorry, he's a 1st round fantasy or dynasty pick is what he was.
Second round of the 2020.
Second round pick. Yep, you're right. So, but again, in the 2nd round, teams are drafting starters in the 2nd round, right? They see guys who have plenty of potential. So I kind of like the unknown. He's a young commodity. He's an unproven commodity. But again, when we're looking at the difference between him or an Aaron Jones or even a Rachaad White, like, sometimes you need that upside. Like, you need to have a guy who can pop a little bit. And Carolina has been more than patient with this kid. So there's something in him that the Panthers organization sees. And maybe this is finally the year that the rest of the, kind of the football world is going to be able to see what real volume for Jonathan Brooks looks like, instead of him landing on the season-ending IR again.
Right. And my apologies, the stats I read off earlier were from 2024, not last year's deal. He did miss all of last year with injury. And this is one that I am kind of torn on, right? Because a couple years ago, you did see Carolina go through and give Chuba the big contract extension and really seemingly kind of push their chips in the middle with Chuba. And then you saw Rico Dowdle really come in and kind of take that job by force. And you started seeing Chuba Hubbard really kind of starting to lose that job to Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle left in the offseason here. Jonathan Brooks, coming off of that second ACL, which, again, this is one of those that typically with a lot of like the ACL injuries, I want the guy 2 years removed from that more so than the year back, much less 2 years in a row missing time for that injury. So that is a big red flag for me. I do like what you're saying about the kind of that 4th running back. And yes, that's where I want to start kind of maybe taking a shot on a player like this, because the talent, you would think that the talent is there from the standpoint that Carolina didn't go out and really bring in any additional competition for either one of these two outside of, between Chuba and Jonathan Brooks. But at the same time too, this is a guy that, if I'm taking a shot on him, I've got to take a shot in the 9th round and that does seem a little bit on the pricey side for a guy that, we have yet to see him really do anything in the league. So, and quite frankly, it feels a little bit like a dart throw, and I have a hard time spending 9th round capital on a dart throw. So, if he falls to me in the 10th, really, if he falls to me about the 11th, that's where I'm probably more a buyer. 9th round, I'm probably going to let him wind up on somebody else's roster. Any other thoughts on Jonathan Brooks?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at J.K. Dobbins. And J.K. Dobbins was off to a fantastic start last year before injury. Caught up with him again. 153 attempts, 772 yards, 4 touchdowns, 14 targets, 11 receptions for 37 yards. Thoughts on J.K. Dobbins?
Dobbins is going to be the first one out the gate for the Broncos until injury gets him. And again, his injuries have been freak injuries. This was a horse collar tackle, and he did come back for the playoffs, right? So it's not that it didn't end his season. It just took a while to recover, and it was a horse collar tackle. But he was a very solid RB2, a very solid RB2. Again, we are drafting this guy in the late 30s, and he's a guy who came back to the Broncos. Clearly, Sean Payton trusts him. Like, I think you can get some upside out of him. Again, for where you're drafting him, I really like him as a 4th running back. As a 3rd running back, I think in this range, I think you take it because you have guaranteed points to start the season. You just don't know how long those guaranteed points are going to last. And ultimately, that's going to be the problem. Sean Payton also likes to rotate his running backs in and out a lot. Even with his good start, J.K. Dobbins was only averaging like 52% of the snap share. So it's not that he's dominating the time on the field, but even within that, he was seeing going through and looking at this, he was seeing an average of 17 touches a game. I mean, maybe 17 and a half if I'm doing my rough math correctly. Like I'm okay with that. Like for a guy that you're getting, again, 8th, 9th round, and you're getting 17 opportunities a game, you're not going to see much of that potential below him as far as where that looks. So it's not super sexy. It's not anything that you feel really good about. Necessarily, but he's a guy that you can plug in a pinch. Maybe he fills a flex need. Maybe one of your running backs has an early bye. Maybe one of them catches a tight hamstring early and you have to throw Dobbins into action. All those are opportunities that I'm at least going to give him a strong look, because I think that there's an opportunity here is if you can get 15 games out of him. Right. I'm not expecting an entire season, right? Gets nicked up. Maybe he misses 1, 2, even 3. So if you can get 14, 15 games out of him, I think he returns value plus some here. I think you can see him finish, anywhere from, he could finish as high as, I'd tell you, 22 if he stays healthy, all the way down to running back 72 if he doesn't. So really low ceiling, or decently high ceiling for the draft position, super low floor because he has an injury history. So a lot of choices to make in this round, but I don't hate him. I guess that's the best way to put this. All this rambling on for me to tell you, I don't hate him, but you got to understand what you're getting with the Denver Broncos offense and how this is going to work. And John or J.K. Dobbins is a little bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, and it is very much a deal at where you what kind of ride you want to have this fantasy season, right? The roller coaster is a very apt analogy. on that one. So I like that thought, right? Like this is a deal that has okay upside, does carry a bust type of risk here due to some of that injury concerns that we've seen in the past. But this is a deal that he's going to be the 1-2 thumper type of back. He's going to be a guy that potentially, when they get into the red zone, has some touchdown upside with him as well. So I do like all of those things, and this is a deal that with J.K. Dobbins, you can draft him as your in a lot of cases as your fourth running back here, and get back end RB2 type of upside with that. And I do like that, right? Like even with all of that, it wouldn't surprise me if we see J.K. Dobbins average 14, 15 touches on the low side of things in games that he's playing, and sign me up for my running back 4 being able to get 15 opportunities a game. Because then if I've got something that happens with RB1, RB2, flex type of things, I've got some options that I can play with on that one. But this is a deal that if I'm going to take J.K. Dobbins as my fourth running back, I need to also draft a fifth running back and carry a fifth running back on my roster for that depth, because you don't want to be trying to rock through a full season, especially the playoffs, all of that. If he does go down, and then you're dealing with 3 running backs to try and fill 2 holes in a flex. So I think that there's some good upside here. I like the idea of J.K. Dobbins and what we've seen him do in this system. But that risk injury is a bit of a concern, but still one that I'm willing to take a ride on this year. Any other thoughts here on J.K. Dobbins?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and head on over to Blake Corum, who last year 145 attempts, 746 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground, 14 targets, 8 receptions, 36 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns through the air. Thoughts on Blake Corum?
With how Sean McVay has run his running back room to this point, I think my only interest in Blake Corum is if I have Kyren Williams and take him as an earlier, not the earliest, but an earlier handcuff. I see them trying to get him more involved this year, but Kyren Williams, when healthy, just dominates the snap share. He just doesn't leave the field. And Blake Corum had a couple opportunities, showed well in the 2 real opportunities he had last year, but just doesn't do much outside of Kyren being nicked up or going down completely. So as a standalone, I'm going to pass on this all day long. Like, I just don't want the headache. If I'm a Kyren Williams owner, then I'm probably going to take a good hard look at Blake Corum as a potential handcuff, knowing that the Rams really lean on their lead running back.
Yeah. This is kind of a cosign on this one, right? Like this is a deal that if I've got Kyren Williams, sign me up for the Blake Corum experience, and I'm gonna have to add a high end handcuff running back onto that one. But if I don't have Blake Corum, or if I don't have Kyren Williams, I want 0 part of Blake Corum on my roster. Just something I'm not looking to do now. One of those that if Kyren happens to go down, anything like that, that's where Blake Corum really, value really kind of comes from, is being the guy in that offense. And with Kyren there, it's not going to happen. So I am out on Blake Corum unless I'm spending earlier draft capital on Kyren Williams and I need the backup and I need the handcuff. Any other thoughts on Blake Corum? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell last year, 114 attempts, 537 yards, 5 touchdowns, 85 targets for 73 receptions, 486 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Thoughts on Kenny Gainwell?
This is a guy that I do like, and probably more than what I should, honestly. But I got burned by Bucky Irving last year. I didn't love him necessarily going into it, and I put myself in a really bad position in the home league, and I kind of panic drafted Bucky Irving, and then I paid the price. This year, I'm not going to do that. I will pass on Bucky, and then grab Kenneth Gainwell, who I think is going to see ample amount of touches in Tampa Bay. If Bucky does go down, whether it's an injury or kind of some of the mental health things that he was dealing with, right? That Gainwell is going to step right in there, and he'll be kind of the 1A, if you will, and then Sean Tucker will spell him a little bit. So I like Kenneth Gainwell a lot, and I think that there's room for a lot of upside here. We know he's a good pass catching running back, and Baker doesn't always check down to the running back, right? Baker likes to drive it down the field. However, with Mike Evans being gone, maybe that changes things a little bit for Baker, right? You don't necessarily have the guy that you're going to force it to down the field. Obviously, you're gonna take your shots with Johnson and with Mbuka. Chris Godwin's kind of running the middle of the field right there. You have Cade Otton, who will show up once in the season, and fantasy owners are all going to rush to go get the next tight end. That's never going to happen. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I'm willing to take a stab here at Kenneth Gainwell, because I do think that the opportunities are going to be there when it's all said and done with, and that you will see a positive value return.
Yeah, I really like the price that you can get on Kenny Gainwell right now. This is one that I have a feeling that as we get closer to draft season, he will no longer be down here in past an RB30, and a guy that will see some tremendous creep start happening here as more and more drafts come up. This is a guy that for how Zach Robinson likes to run an offense, Kenny Gainwell, on paper would kind of fit well into that role, and what how they can kind of play along or play that out there. This is also one too that Bucky is recovering from an off-season procedure on this one, so Kenny Gainwell certainly has some opportunity here early in the offseason, and we'll see how this will continue to shape up here as training camp happens. But this is one that I am checking the beat writers for Tampa Bay when we get into training camp, and really looking at what those practice logs look like, and what training camp looks like, and the reports coming out of Tampa Bay on this one, because you did have Todd Bowles, the head coach for Tampa Bay, come out and referred to Kenneth Gainwell as the team's 1B running back, which is pretty high praise at this point. So if we are going to see a 1A, 1B, this is a really good value for the 1B type of running back here, with the ceiling getting up there into a RB2 type of range, but you're buying it at RB3 prices. So I do like the value that we're seeing here, and this is one that I'm going to certainly be keeping an eye on as we approach draft season. Any other thoughts on Kenny Gainwell?
No, sir.
All righty, let's go ahead and take a look at Kyle Magungai. Kyle Magungai last year, 169 attempts, 783 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 30 targets, and 18 receptions for 164 yards. Thoughts on Kyle Magungai?
Yes, sir. Yeah, here's another guy that I really like here. I like the value of it. We know Ben Johnson wants to run the football, right? He's does a lot of good things offensively. But when DeAndre Swift missed a little bit of time, not a lot, but just kind of missed a game here, missed a guy there, and when Manungai was able to take that workload on, he made the best of it. He had an RB3 finish, an RB7 finish in the 2 full games or the 1.5 games, I guess, technically, where he was kind of the guy. But he's good in the short yardage. So we saw him sneak in for some touchdowns, youth on his side. only 24 years of age compared to DeAndre Swift, who's a year or two older. And Ben Johnson knows how to make two running backs fantasy relevant. We saw that in Detroit with Gibbs and David Montgomery, and DeAndre Swift even before that. So I like the value here. This is a guy that I have no problem taking as kind of, again, I would love him as my fourth running back, but if I have to take him as my third, I think I can swallow it, and I'm just going to drive a little bit of depth behind it just to make sure.
Yeah, this one is one that I'm on the fence about at this point. I do like the potential upside, right? Like this is a guy that can just plain flat out run, and a guy that has a bit of a nose for the end zone. And we've seen that, you know, to your point with Ben Johnson running two running backs. Like this is a guy that potentially could could siphon some of the goal line work from Swift on this one, and a guy that, if Swift goes down, is the clear-cut kind of winner in that backfield. But if Swift's healthy on this one, I would rather have Swift than Kyle Magungai at this point. So that's kind of where I'm at. This is a guy that I like, but I like the guy in front of him on the depth chart more so. And so I don't know that I'm going to end up with a whole lot of Kyle Magungai on many of my rosters. Any other thoughts on Magungai?
No, sir.
All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to the guy coming off the board at running back 32 currently, and that's Rico Dwaddle. Rico Dwaddle last year, 236 attempts, 1,076 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground, 50 targets, 39 receptions, 297 yards through the air, and 1 touchdown through the air. Thoughts on Rico Dwaddle?
I'm not sure how Pittsburgh's going to use him. Like it's so Rico is more Najee Harris to a Jaylen Warren than it was last year, where Jaylen Warren was kind of that Najee Harris to Kenneth Gainwell's Jaylen Warren. Like, so I am kind of confused by this. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if Warren kind of got first touches, but I think Rico Dowdle he's just good enough. He's going to be annoying. Like, we're going to see a true split here in Pittsburgh. We're going to see a bunch of tight ends. But with the deteriorating Aaron Rodgers, this is kind of Steelers football. Like, I think he's absolutely going to be usable in flex situations for most of the season, and then have some RB2 appeal at times, just because that's how Pittsburgh's playing right now. I don't care that they brought in Michael Pittman. Like, you still have an aging Aaron Rodgers who doesn't throw the ball down the field anymore. So he's going to check it down. He's going to continue to play it safe like he did last year. So, you know, if Dowdle can show he's picked up the Steelers offense the way that they'd like for him to, you're going to see with a little bit of check down work. I could see some third down work here out of Rico Dowdle, maybe some goal line stuff, maybe him and Jaylen Warren kind of split that a little bit, but I don't hate Rico Dowdle here. I think I like Monangai and Kenneth Gainwell more in their respective positions personally than I like Dowdle, but I can't swear to that, honestly. Like, that's just where I have them at the moment, right? As I have him slightly below Monangai, but that's because I have more faith in Ben Johnson, right? And that's the coaching staff and the situation. So I think maybe that's why I would lean that direction. But I expect him to be able to return value here. Like, you will see games where Rico Dowdle is just going to be the guy in Pittsburgh, and then it's going to bounce back over to Jaylen Warren. It's going to be really frustrating, honestly, but there's definitely a place for him, you know, on a roster, depending on how your construction looks this late in the draft.
Yeah, fair enough. I like Rico Dwaddle at this draft spot, right? Like, this is a guy that that I think could sneak into back end RB2 territory when the season's all said and done. And I think can give you some pretty good flex play throughout the season if he's not or if he doesn't end up returning that RB2 value. Yeah, this is a deal, right? Like, right, he's in his third system in 3 years, or third team in 3 years. However, he's reuniting with Mike McCarthy, who he had down in Dallas, when, his both of their last seasons in Dallas there, right? So this is a deal that, there's some familiarity with the coaching staff, with the scheme and the system that's coming into play there. And he's coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see the Steelers get Rico Dwaddle somewhere around 230, 240 touches. He returns about 1,000 yards and gets a handful of touchdowns as well. So I do really like his setup and where we can potentially see him kind of come out to play this year. And I think we can ultimately see him return that kind of back end RB2 territory. So I do like Rico Dwaddle this year and where he's coming off the board and the value there. But on the flip side of that, everybody that's kind of come in and tried to push Jaylen Warren out of that role in that position hasn't been very successful there. So there is kind of that thorn in the side and the potential downside there. But so this is a little bit of risk reward on this one. Still some bust potential on this one, but I do like the upside when it comes to Rico Dwaddle here. Any other thoughts on Rico Dwaddle?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at the guy coming off the board, running back 32, and that is Tony Pollard. Last year, Tony Pollard, 242 attempts, 1,082 yards, 5 touchdowns on the ground, 41 targets, 33 receptions, 206 yards through the air. Thoughts on Tony Pollard?
If you expect Cam Ward to take a step forward, and maybe not a leap, but just a step forward and be a bit more efficient, I think Tony Pollard at this range is a really good pick. He's got Tajay Spears and Singleton kind of behind him, pushing him a little bit, but he was a solid RB2 for a good part of the year. And then down the home stretch, had a couple really good games. RB2 and then an RB9 finish in weeks 14 and 15. His biggest thing is there's not a whole lot of juice in the passing game at the moment. Now, I think some of that was route design. He did catch some balls, but it didn't really it was like desperation, get out of my hands type thing from Cam Ward. It wasn't designed screenplays and doing different things with him, but he made the most of his opportunities. My biggest thing is the touchdowns. Like, I'd love to see him fall into the end zone a couple more times and being able to kind of boost it from that side of things. But with this Tennessee offense, I do worry about the number of red zone opportunities that he's actually going to see, only because I'm not convinced that they're going to look dramatically better on offense than what they did last year. I think it very well could be kind of rinse and repeat type situation. So if that's the case, I think he's a fringe RB2, RB3 by the time it's all said and done with. So a little bit of value here. But he's not going to be a guaranteed RB2 guy based on what we know about this Tennessee offense. He's going to really have to work for it.
Right. I mean, even with that poor performance we saw out of Tennessee's offense last year, we still saw Tony Pollard manage to scrape together and go over 1,000 yards for his fourth season in a row, over 1,000 yards. And wouldn't surprise me to see him return over 1,000 yards in this season. I do really like the value coming off the board here for Tony Pollard. There's not many guys out there that you're going to be able to draft in the 6th, 7th round type of range. That's the lead running back for their team and can get you a reasonable 16, 17 touches, 16, 17 opportunities a game, right? So I think even from a volume standpoint, he can still get there and potentially return RB2 type of value for you. And so where he's coming off the board now, I do like that that potential upside on that one. Even if he doesn't necessarily manage to fall into the end zone a whole bunch, I think that the rushing work and the volume can still get you there on a week in, week out basis to return at worst flex play opportunity for you. So, any other thoughts on Tony Pollard? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at guy coming up the board at RB30, and that is RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey last year, 146 attempts, 540 yards, 7 touchdowns, 58 targets, 47 receptions, 356 yards, and 5 touchdowns through the air. Thoughts on RJ Harvey?
I think I'm staying away from Harvey here. Again, the way Sean Payton rotates running backs in, they brought in Jonah Coleman. Like, Harvey did a decent job, but definitely ran out of gas when he was trying to be the guy after J.K. Dobbins went down. So I think I'd rather have Tony Pollard, a guy that we just spoke about. I think it's again, having the one, RJ's really the two in Denver's offense. If my opinion is correct. So really at this position, I'm going to pass on RJ Harvey right here, as much as I don't want to. I don't see the value here in comparison to some other guys that we've just spoken about.
Right. Well, and RJ Harvey is when he does run the ball, he's not an efficient runner when it's all comes down to it, right? Like last year managed to average 3.7 yards an attempt. There was a lot of games out there that were not even worth really mentioning when looking at given an opportunity to run the ball and the lack of production on the volume given. So that is concerning, right? We also heard that he underwent an off-season procedure there as well.
Is what they're calling it.
Yeah. To look at a labrum. So while the reports are saying that he's progressing well and all of that, this is a guy that I would agree with you. I think that when it comes down to it, he's a passing down work type of back for Denver. And I don't know that I necessarily want to take a guy here that, kind of as my third running back and may have to rely on him as an RB2 flex play type of consideration for a lot of my roster, or a lot of weeks on my roster, when there's a guy further down the list and about 2-3 rounds behind him on the same team that I think will return better fantasy value in J.K. Dobbins. So I'm pretty well out on RJ Harvey this year. Any other thoughts on RJ Harvey?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the guy coming off the board at RB29, and that is Ramondre Stevenson. Last year, Ramondre Stevenson, 130 attempts, 603 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 37 targets, 32 receptions, 345 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on Ramondre Stevenson?
He just continued to hold off Travion Henderson last year, but I don't know that continues this year. And the touchdowns helped him. I'm not sure that we're going to see Ramondre with 9 touchdowns again this year. So I see some regression coming that way between the ascension of Henderson, the regression of Stevenson. I'm a pass. I'm gun shy on Stevenson. I just think there's too many flags here with kind of where he's at. Still has a history of fumbles. No thanks is just the short answer. I'm out on Stevenson.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that this job is Ramondre's until it isn't. Type of situation. And while yes, I do think Travion Henderson may try and carve out a bit of a role in this offense, and then they try and start working him in a bit more. Still wouldn't surprise me if this is still a 60-40 split in Ramondre's favor when this is all said and done. So I think that you still see him be the lead back on this thing. I think he still gets the goal line work with this one. He certainly has a nose for the end zone, and and especially kind of coming down the stretch was highly efficient with the ball in his hands as well. So I do like some of the upside here for Ramondre. Not one that I would feel really comfortable with him being my fourth running back on my squad, but not necessarily my second or third, which is about where you're going to have to draft him. So from that aspect on the draft capital, I'm probably out. But the role, I don't know. So we see the role change a ton from last year to this year. Just that price tag, I'm just have a hard time getting behind. Any other thoughts on Ramondre Stevenson?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Jaylen Warren. Last year, Jaylen Warren, 211 attempts, 958 yards for 6 touchdowns, 45 targets, 40 receptions, 333 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on Jaylen Warren?
I think I'd rather have Dowdle, the guy that we talked about a little bit earlier. Take the value when there's both guys there. I think Dowdle's going to eat into some of that early down work. Yeah, they're still going to split carries, but I think it's going to be I think it's going to be hard for him to push up into this territory, and I'd rather sit back and be wrong about Jaylen Warren than gamble on him as maybe my second, potentially my third running back, right? Like what we were just talking about with Ramondre. I like him more than Ramondre. So I'll give him that. And a lot of that's just based on Pittsburgh's offense. And we think how it's going to flow through with Mike McCarthy there, understanding what Aaron Rodgers' limitations are. But I can't put my finger on it. And it's not meant to be a cop-out, but there's something about Jaylen Warren's game that it's kind of meh. Like, okay, he did that well. He did that okay. Like, I have a hard time pinpointing what he does really, really good.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting deal here, right? This is a guy that's a high bust potential for me. Like this is a guy that I'm very willing just to be wrong on. So he's not going to see many of my rosters, if any at all, right? Like this is a deal that I think by the time the season's all said and done, we see pretty much a 50-50 split between him and Dwaddle on this one, right? Jaylen Warren maybe has a little bit of some upside from passing work, and especially that's if Aaron Rodgers is kind of checking down and moving that thing through that way, but I don't think we see Jaylen Warren get anywhere close to touching 200 rushing attempts this year. I think we're probably closer to the 170 type of range. And at that point, I think we're going to see him have a hard time cracking that 800 yards when it's all said and done. And I think that we see Rico Dwaddle probably start seeding more of the goal line type of work on this thing as well. So this is one that I'm pretty well just out on Jaylen Warren. Any other thoughts on Jaylen Warren?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and head on over to the guy coming off the board at running back 27, and that's Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard last year, 134 attempts, 511 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 39 targets, 30 receptions, 223 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on Chuba Hubbard?
If you don't believe Jonathan Brooks is going to be healthy or be able to make it through a season, I think Chuba's a great pick right here. The volume is going to speak for itself. He had a down 25, but they had a very capable back in Rico that if Chuba wasn't getting it early in the game, they could kind of change it up and then run with the hot hand. This year, it might be a bit harder to have. Again, it depends on how you feel about Jonathan Brooks. If you like Brooks and you want to be invested into that, okay, then you take the couple rounds of discount, you take Jonathan Brooks. Okay, we're going to see how this works with the young gun and go from there. If you think that the 2 ACL tears are just too much and he's not going to be as explosive or look like he did back in the 24 draft when the Panthers took him, well, then Chuba Hubbard's your guy. And at this level, we've seen him return an RB1 finish being drafted at this late or at this level or lower. And we've also seen kind of the floor, right, where he finishes RB40, what was he, 42 last year? Is that right? So we've seen the ceiling and the floor between 24 and 25 seasons with Chuba Hubbard. I could see him settle somewhere right in the middle, right? If everything goes well, have him finish right around, RB 30, give or take 3 spots. So I don't hate him by any stretch. I just think you need to have a real good understanding of what Carolina's going to be doing offensively if you're drafting Chuba Hubbard, because what do you do if he just is not efficient and kind of poos the bed again? Like, you got to make sure you have a pivot on your roster, and you can't just bank Chuba either sliding him into the flex every week or as a really strong RB2 swap out in a matchup type situation. He's going to struggle to get back to that level of confidence for me.
Yeah, this is a deal that you've got to if you're going to draft Chuba here, you've got to believe that he's going to be able to fend off Jonathan Brooks, be able to get a workload where he's seeing, close to 300 opportunities over the course of the season, right? Between and really have at least 240 touches on the ground, right? Rushing attempts there. So, but he's a guy that has fluctuated dramatically when it comes to his efficiency throughout his career, right? In 21, 3.6 yards a carry. In 22, it was 4.9. In 23, it was 3.8. In 24, it was 4.8. And last year was 3.8, right? So, if you're looking at that trend, okay, cool. Like, in the even years, we've seen far better efficiency from him. And maybe that is the case. Maybe we do see Carolina kind of take another step, and we see the offense continue to evolve, and we see some good efficiency here. This is not a guy that I'm really wanting to bank on, though. I do think that we see the increase in the workload. We see probably around 200, 210 attempts. We probably see him closer to that 4.2 type of range from an efficiency standpoint. So we do see some of those things kind of tick up there. But this is not necessarily a schedule that gives you the kind of warm and fuzzies when it comes to that on his strength of schedule. And I don't know that I really want to get behind Chuba Hubbard this year, and especially when it comes to a price tag in the 5th, 6th round. In a lot of those cases, there's some other guys that I think I'd rather take a shot on. So yeah, I think in a pinch, you might be able to talk me into going Chuba Hubbard, but if able to kind of maneuver the drafts on how I'd like to do, there's some other options out there for me in that 6th round. Any other thoughts here on Chuba? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the guy coming off the board at running back 27, and that is Jadarian Price. Jadarian Price, rookie coming into Seattle with their 1st round draft pick. Thoughts on Jadarian Price? That's one.
I feel like this price tag's getting pretty steep at RB27. And I know that there's the path for some opportunity here early on in the season. I know that the draft capital that the Seahawks spent on him is very high. But I also know that there's nothing saying that they're just not going to split carries no matter what. Um, even once Charbonnet comes back. So I think this is a little rich for my blood. But it's not because of a lack of opportunity in his rookie season. It's more so just I don't want to be invested at this price tag.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those that when everybody that's kind of out there and seemingly driving the price up is a believer that Zach Charbonnet is going to miss some extended time here early on, and that you're going to see Jadarian Price ultimately just kind of lock up the backfield and run away with it. But I'm right there with you. The price tag on Jadarian Price is becoming too rich. This is a guy that certainly can run the ball, right, and certainly move between the tackles, can be a 1-2 thumper, has some explosiveness to get outside there as well. But the pass protection for this running back is just I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say it, is not good. And that's the best that I can come up with there, right? Like there's a lot of work that needs to happen from a pass protection standpoint that I think will ultimately keep him off the field in obvious passing down situations, even if Zach Charbonnet is not out there. And that limits the upside, that limits the ability to see the field, and that limits his ability to ultimately take that job and run with it. Because that's one of the things that if you can't pick up the pass pro, you're going to have a hard time seeing the field consistently. So I have a hard time locking this one in at a fifth to sixth round price for Jadarian Price. Any other thoughts on Jadarian?
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Bashul Tutin. And last year, Tutin 83 attempts, 307 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns. 14 targets, 10 receptions for 79 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on Tutin?
Tootin I find really interesting. Again, I've made no bones about it. I do have a lot of interest in this Jacksonville offense. Seemingly going to be given at least the first crack to be the lead guy there in Jacksonville. I think that there's not a whole lot of competition that's going to be pushing him. Chris Rodriguez is a guy that I have some interest in, kind of like a late flyer, best ball type commodity. But LaQuint Allen, I know that there's some people who got some buzz on him, but I'm not one of them. And then after that, Jameer Taylor, Amir Abdullah, I thought he retired 5 years ago, and DJ Dallas, kind of the same thing. I thought he retired 3 years ago too. So there's a path here. And if he's able to be efficient with his touches, excuse me, and step up and do the right things in pass pro, I think you could see Bashal Tutin on the field quite a bit for Jacksonville. And opportunity is what we're asking for here. So he's a guy that I'm keeping a really close eye on here in the offseason. As we go through camps, as we get into the preseason, I'm glad that our home league drafts as late as it does, because it's going to give me a much better understanding of what I think Jacksonville is going to be doing with him. Because right now on paper, I like him a lot. But there's a big difference between being like the second or third guy as opposed to being the guy in an NFL offense.
Right. This is a guy that, I think his potential outcome varies wildly on this one. This is a guy that ultimately could be knocking on the back end of RB1 territory. Right, you're talking that fringe type of type of RB1 ceiling, right? Running back 13 to 15 type of range. But on the flip side, I think you could very easily see him down there at running back 40, just the same, right? And I think the outcomes are just as likely either way. Travis Etienne leaving, that does open up the door for a lot of these running backs. But it would not surprise me to see a running back by committee take place with this one, right? And you see Tootin kind of be the between the 20 guy. You see Chris Rodriguez potentially get in there more as the red zone type of back. And you see LaQuint Allen come in as kind of the third down change of pace type of back. So I think if they do go into this running back by committee type of approach, Bashil Tutin's probably way overvalued at this point. If he does outright win the job, and we're going to see him be, the role that Travis Etienne was getting last year in this offense, then it's an undervalue, and right there's significant room for outperformance here. So at this point in the season, this is very much I'm going to wait and see what happens here through training camp and see what takes place here, and keeping a very close eye on this one as well. Right, just like we were talking about with Tampa Bay's offense and what that running back competition is going to look like. This is another one that's right there with that with Tampa Bay as far as an organization to keep an eye on with their running back room, and really seeing what the beat writers are saying as the practices are taking place and as training camp wears on, because this is a very wide range, and this is a guy that could ultimately be a ruin a few rosters out there, or be a guy that you look like a draft guru when it's all said and done. So I'm leaning on I'm still on the fence, and this is one I'm going to have to wait and see on a little bit. Any other thoughts on Tootin?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Bucky Irving. And last year, Bucky Irving had 173 attempts, 588 yards, 1 rushing touchdowns, 35 targets, 30 receptions, 277 yards receiving, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on Bucky Irving?
I think the potential's there. I think a lot of it's just going to be how his mental health holds up. Missed a lot of time last year. The rumors were starting to swirl. Came back and wasn't terrible, but again, you'd like to see him fall in the end zone a bit more, right? 4 total touchdowns and only 1 of them rushing is not a recipe for success. On top of that, his efficiency was garbage, right? So 3.4 yards an attempt last year is not good by any standards, let alone in the NFL. So I think there's plenty of things to improve upon. So I think he's going to have to slip a little bit is really kind of where I'm looking at Bucky Irving. Like I do not want him inside the top 24 running backs. If I can get him outside the top 24 running backs, I might take a flyer on him. Generally, my draft strategy, I would already have 2 guys on the roster, so I'm not going to be forced to kind of put him in and feel like I'm forced into a roster spot for him. But ultimately, he's a guy that I think I'm probably just going to end up staying away from unless he has some dramatic fall down the draft board in whatever league I'm in that moment.
Yeah, this is a guy right now I think is being overdrafted. There's a lot of things that have to kind of bounce back and go right for Bucky Irving this year, right? Like, needs to return to health. Sean Tucker was definitely the guy to compete with when it came to goal line touches last season. Sean Tucker's still on the roster, and Kenneth Gainwell coming in, I think, eats into a lot of the passing game work when it's all said and done. So this is one that's not going to surprise me if we see Tampa Bay with truly a 3-headed backfield when it's all said and done. Bucky Irving being between the 20s type of guy, Sean Tucker being the red zone guy, and Kenneth Gainwell being a change of pace and passing game work. So there's other running backs that I would rather on this roster that I'd rather take a shot on with the draft capital on that right now. So I don't know that I'm going to have much of Bucky Irving on my rosters this year. If he does fall a bit, that does open up the door for me to go ahead and take a shot on him, right? Like if he falls into the 7th, maybe 8th round, I'm kind of all in on Bucky at that point. But where he's coming off the board as a late 5th, early 6th rounder, gives me just enough pause to look elsewhere. Any other thoughts on Bucky Irving? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at DeAndre Swift. And DeAndre Swift last year, 223 attempts, 1,087 yards on the ground, 9 rushing touchdowns, 84 targets, 34 receptions, 299 yards receiving, and 1 receiving touchdown. Thoughts on DeAndre Swift?
I'm fading Swift. I think we're going to see regression on the rushing touchdowns. I think Monangai is going to be able to acquire a few more of those, really kind of going through things. It seemed like last year, once they both kind of really were rolling, it was just alternating series. And sometimes that's really hard to figure out, right? Which you tell me what series it is that the Bears are going to focus on the run as opposed to the pass, or the series that, okay, we're going to punch it in the end zone on the ground and still letting Caleb Williams do his thing. So I like DeAndre Swift. He's a Georgia boy. I'm always going to have a soft spot for him. But as kind of active as I was around him last year, being able to grab him, put him on my roster and go, this upcoming season, I want to see him slide a little bit. Still some potential interest, but at the price tag, I'm kind of I think I'm just a little gun shy. And if I could get him closer to RB30, then I think I'm going to be in on DeAndre Swift and I'll buy the dip at that point. But if he continues to creep up and gets closer and closer to RB20, no, I don't think I want him there.
Okay. Well, it makes sense, right? Like I do think that DeAndre Swift, you're kind of buying him at his floor at RB23, right? Like even with some of the changes, even with Magungai coming in and potentially eating into that workload, I think that he still returns RB23 or better value on the season. This is a guy, depending upon how your roster, you could be drafting as your third running back. As your third running back on the roster, absolutely love that one, right? Like this is a guy that I think can be a solid running back 2 for you. I don't know that you're going to see a big breakout type of deal, but this is going to be a far more of just a very steady kind of performance week in, week out. That guy that's going to go out there and just kind of deliver you RB20 on the week pretty consistently. And so with that, there's a lot that I can build around my roster on that one, right? Like if I've got a running back that's a set it forget at RB2 that I can draft here, I don't mind that because then I can go out and take some swings on some upside elsewhere. And potentially take a little bit more volatile wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 type of deal, potentially a little bit more upside on a flex type of play, home run type of deal here. So I really like what I think DeAndre Swift will be able to deliver this season. I think you're still going to see him probably with around 220 rushing attempts and see him clear over 1,000 yards rushing again. Even if we see him regress a little bit on the touchdowns, I think we still see 7 as probably a pretty safe floor for touchdowns on this one. So this is very much a guy that I think you're going to get week in, week out, just steady RB2 type of performance, and you're drafting him out of the floor. So I really do like DeAndre Swift and where he's coming off the board right now. Any other thoughts on DeAndre Swift? All right. Let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at TreVeyon Henderson, the guy coming off the board at running back number 22. Last year, TreVeyon Henderson, 180 rush attempts, 911 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 42 targets, 35 receptions, 221 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on TreVeyon Henderson?
So I think we started to see the writing on the wall for him last year. We knew he was explosive, but starting kind of at week 9. We saw him, consistently average 15 to 18 touches a game. I think we could continue to see that number rise here a little bit. So I don't mind the flyer on Henderson. I know Ramondre is going to be there as kind of a pain in the side at certain points of the year, but Travion Henderson just has such pop and just kind of that take it to the house ability. And if you're getting an RB3 at this point, like what a great asset to have as a guy is a one touch and go type running back. There's just not many of those in this league, and Henderson can absolutely be a back like that.
Yeah, I mean the upside's certainly there, right? And the flash is certainly there, and he put some things on tape last year for sure, right? That all stood out and looked very, very good. But where you have to draft him at RB22 puts him in a space where you're realistically having to draft him as your second running back off the board. And this is a deal that I don't know that he does enough to fully supplant Ramondre Stevenson. And I think it's going to ultimately take Ramondre getting hurt, going down, for Travion Henderson to return the draft capital that you're having to spend to draft him and return RB 22 or better type of performance on this one. So this is a guy that, the talent is certainly there. The flash is certainly there. The pop is certainly there. But Ramondre Stevenson is a pro and did very well with his in that offense last year and has done very well in a few different seasons with the Patriots there as well. And I don't know that we're going to see Travion Henderson do enough short of a Ramondre Stevenson injury to fully take over that backfield and get the workload required for him to return value at his current draft capital. Any other thoughts on Travion Henderson?
No. We're a little separated on this one, more so than some of the others.
Yeah, it certainly happens, right? This is one of those that I'm just kind of more willing to be wrong on this one and take my shot somewhere else. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at Keyshawn Judkins. Wow, words are tough tonight. Keyshawn Judkins. Last year, Keyshawn Judkins had 230 rushing attempts, 827 yards, 7 touchdowns, 36 targets, 26 receptions, 171 receiving yards, 0 receiving touchdowns. Thoughts on Keyshawn Judkins?
Got injured late in the season, had off-season surgery, kind of waiting to see how he looks coming back, because it was a pretty nasty break right between his ankle and his fibula. So Judkins is a guy that I think I'm gonna just fade away. Like, I don't love the Browns offense. I don't love the fact that he's coming off of injury. I think they're going to be trailing in far more games than they're going to be leading, so it kind of takes the running game out of perspective. So I would be fading Judkins here pretty hard and looking at quite a few of the guys that we just got done speaking about.
Yeah, I think this is one too that will be a little bit split on here too, because I'm willing to take the shot on Keyshawn Judkins. I think the volume is going to be there. If nothing else, though, I think the volume will be there to get him to fantasy relevance at an RB2 type of range. This is a deal that, with that injury, wasn't necessarily a soft tissue injury to it. And when he came back and, several reports and several notes out there about showing up in OTAs and looked very explosive, and rehab going very well, and, where he's kind of on track for, like, all of those things, the reports came out glowingly on that one. So I'm willing to take kind of that injury concern off the table. I am there with you that the Browns offense is I think that, there's going to be some issues when it comes to the Browns being able to move the ball. And I don't know that their defense is going to be at the same level we saw over the last couple of seasons in order to, stop the opposing team and put their offense out there more so. So those are all high concerns there. But this is a guy too that I think from a workload perspective, I think we're still going to see a guy get 200 and 260, 270 rushing attempts when it's all said and done. And from the volume standpoint alone, I think that he'll be able to return fantasy value of running back 21 or better. So I think this is a guy that you're probably looking 270 touches, 1,200 to 1,300 total yards, and 7 touchdowns. So at that standpoint, sign me up for Judkins and where he's coming off the board, because I think I will get some very, very consistent RB2, potentially even some RB1 weekly finishes along the way. So I certainly don't mind this draft capital and this pick here, and a guy that I'll be looking to kind of actively be putting on my roster as RB2 for me. Any other thoughts on Keyshawn Judkins?
Nope.
All right, awesome. Well, that's going to take us down here to the end of it tonight. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, definitely I think we each had a couple real value plays here where we feel like some value plays are, but there's no shortage of guys that we're both just kind of staying away from here in this range, right? And again, you're looking for a couple different things, right? You're either looking for a guy who is going to be there week in and week out if you draft a running back ahead of him who may have a bit of an injury history or is a little bit boom bust at times, or there's a couple guys that you and I both said, I want zero part of this. So it is a bit of a minefield as it is every year in this range. But I think it's clear we both have a couple guys that we're eyeing coming up into this draft, right? That we're at least really going to be paying close attention to, and part of the good stuff is that it's not the same guy for both of us. Not only for the show content, but the fact that you and I have to draft against each other in our home league constantly, and maybe if we're not always chasing after the same guy, we might get a little bit of reprieve instead of dog cussing each other through the process.
Yeah, that's very true. So, should be a good one here. Right, next week we're gonna jump in there and look at the top 20 coming off the board in ADP, and then we'll be on to the wide receivers, and then really start getting into the draft strategy and what that looks like for this year. But that's gonna do it for us tonight. Appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in, all that good stuff. Make sure that you're following us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. Do us a favor, head over to YouTube, click that like and subscribe button, and ring that bell for the notifications when we go live. But that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.